So this is part 4 of the bad things that were taught to me by Open University. So where I got to was Open University has presented 3 possibilities for light, and I've dealt with the first 2 possibilities in the previous videos. And what Open University does, as been pointed out, it doesn't want to address the issue of ether properly and presents a dumbed down version of ether to talk about and not a more complicated ether. So now move on to the third possibility for the sake of completeness. And the third possibility is light speed c relative to its detector. The main points of disagreement with what being taught have been dealt with in the previous video. Open University says this, it asks the question, is c the speed relative to the detector, and c is the speed of light. And it quotes Arthur Conan Doyle from the Sherlock Holmes story, where Sherlock Holmes says, when you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. So Open University, what they're trying to do is to eliminate all the other possibilities for the empirical evidence and say it is special relativity is the answer. But as I'm pointing out, Open University is not dealing properly with the empirical evidence. And Open University says 3 possible interpretations of the phrase the speed of light were given in an earlier section which I've dealt with. Experimental evidence has dismissed 2 of them, so only 1 remains. And I say that is false. Experimental evidence did not dismiss them, and that was explained in my previous videos. Open University was misrepresenting experimental evidence by misinterpreting it. The fictional Sherlock Holmes would not be happy with the mainstream educators' flawed methodology. So Open University asks, is the third possibility correct? ? Is c the speed of light relative to the detector? If so, we will have to accept some surprising consequences, as the following imaginary experiment shows. Now this is disturbing because instead of appealing to an actual physical experiment that has been performed, Open University seems to be appealing to only an imaginary experiment. And so Open University, dealing with its imaginary experiments, asked us to consider 2 railway trains A and B. I'll let you read that for a moment. Hopefully you can read things fast. So the 2 trains A and B are travelling in the same direction but at different speeds along 2 parallel railway tracks. So on to the next slide. And so Open University says the following. I'll leave you a few moments to read that. Hopefully you are a fast reader. And so my comments upon what is written is Open University omits saying what should fail to conform with everyday ideas about relative speed. If an observer says that the light leaving the detector to the right with light speed c, and the detector is moving to the right with non-zero speed v relative to him, then the light moves at speed c plus v to the right relative to him, and that is greater than c for v non-zero. That is just straightforward addition of speeds according to Newtonian physics. And at this stage of the Open University booklet, there is nothing being said about adding speeds in what is usually called relativistic speed addition. So what is it talking about here? It's not making itself very clear at all. And what I said would have just conformed to the next claim from Open University. Open University says, whether you find it surprising or not, c really is the speed of light relative to its detector. Open University continues, this interpretation of c is consistent with the binary star experiment and with the Michelson-Morley experiment, and that was dealt with in my previous videos. Moreover, no experiment has ever provided any convincing evidence to the contrary. The fact that the constancy of the speed of light relative to its detector conflicts with everyday experience just shows how limited and unreliable everyday experience is. And my comment on that is, doesn't say how it conflicts with everyday experience. Presumably what Open University means that the mathematics is going to present in the next section conflicts with everyday experience. But for those extra sections, I would just complain that the mathematics is not being dealt with properly. So from the earlier discussion of experiments, we have an ether, and that's a medium for light waves. Claims to the contrary are just talking about certain simplistic ether theories and not talking about the more complicated ether. And the more complicated ether theory would be Lorentz theory. And this is a picture of Lorentz, and as earlier pointed out, as per what Norton says about it, question is, how is it possible for Maxwell's electrodynamics to be based fundamentally upon the notion of an ether, yet no experiment can reveal the magnitude and direction of the ether current? This was the problem taken up and solved brilliantly by Lorentz. So Lorentz has an ether theory, and he is using the same sort of mathematics as Einstein, in the sense that both Einstein and Lorentz are using the Lorentz transformations, and in Lorentz's theory you have an ether. So what Open University does, it just avoids contrasting Lorentz's theory with special relativity, or saying whether they are supposed to be the same theory, and numerous other issues like that. Open University just doesn't deal with the empirical evidence properly, and based on the empirical evidence, the student is supposed to be persuaded to accept special relativity, hence the whole thing ends as a farce. Thank you, and that's the end of this little talk.